Hello everyone, it is your resin 3D printing god, Akuma Mods, back again with our review of the Uniformation GK1. Let's roll. Welcome everybody. So we've had this unit for quite some time. It's actually, I'm kind of looking at the unboxing date, and my apologies for the long-awaited review on this machine, but I wanted to get a good amount of printing in. I think I went a little bit above and beyond that because when we basically unboxed this, it was almost a year ago to the day. We're filming this on October 11th, and I did the unboxing on October 15th of last year, which I did not even realize. So my apologies for the delay, but finally we can get it going. So first and foremost, I wanted to let you know that these machines are quite different than the regular machines that you see on the internet by Anycubic, Elegoo, Frozen, any brand name that you can possibly think of. These are going to be a step above. And what I mean by that is these are actually meant to be more of an industrial dental style printer. Now, granted, they print pretty much exactly the same, but I will say that your failure rate is going to be far less on these machines, and they just print smoothly. It's easy to slice. Talking about slicers, this does use a fork of a Prusa slicer, and they've modified it, to have their own names and their specific profiles. So if you happen to use the Uniformation branded resin, your failure rate will probably decrease even more to that. I'll be honest, I probably only had about 3 failures on this resin printer in the 3 years that I printed with it. Uh, One of the major things that I always tell people about this printer is the dimensional accuracy that this printer performs with is far superior to any of the ones that are on the current market right now. What that basically means is, let's say you design and prototype a part of some sort, whatever it may be, and it is 22 millimeters wide and 22 millimeters long. Well, essentially, when you go to print this on this printer, it's most likely going to come out with that. Now, granted, there's going to be different resins that involve in that to maintain that dimensional accuracy, but it'll be far superior to any of the other ones that you see here in the background or any of the ones that you know. Those might be a millimeter off or 2 millimeters off or so on. Whereas this one's going to be within like 0.1 of a millimeter. It's going to be almost exact to what it is 99% of the time. So that's really where these type of printers shine. What sets this printer apart is just the fact that there's a lot of extra features that I personally like, and some of you guys may or may not, but that's completely up to you. One of the ones is the hinged style lid that I absolutely love on this printer. I wish all printers, basically anything over a 9-inch screen, should pretty much have nowadays. Gone are the days of like a pop top cover or a lift off cover. I personally am beyond that. I really don't think any printer, like I said, that has a 9-inch screen should really have that type of design anymore. It's not effective for a work environment and space specifically. It doesn't work very well. Now, granted, this one does take up quite a bit when we open up the lid, and I'll show you that in a little bit when we start showing some of these prints off. But it is a great thing to have, in my opinion, just because of the whole workflow. It's just easier to use. You can lift it up with like one finger. It's super simple to use. Not only that, the user interface is vastly different than any of the other printers that are on the market. It's a little bit more getting used to it because, well, it is a different design. It is Android based. So it's not your typical like Shitu box looking screen where it's just like print, go here, go here. This does have like an onboard file system storage, so it's very, very nice. It does come with a pretty nice SD card, or I'm sorry, USB drive right out of the gate. And then we also have a 10.1-inch screen inside here, which has some end fet film to hold the resin and basically have the elasticity of that fet film last a lot better. And plus, it also helps with the releasing agents of the resin. So that way you get cleaner, crisper prints off of this printer, unlike, again, most of the ones that you guys see on the market nowadays. Uh, with the 10-inch screen, we are boasting at a 5K resolution. Now, I've said this several times before, in my opinion, resolution's not really going to matter too much to most people unless you have fancy cameras. And obviously, you guys watching this, I don't have fancy cameras. Well, I kind of do, but I don't have fancy lenses or anything like that. I'm very basic, straightforward. I'm not providing you any like super fancy detailed videos. It's just straight and forward. I want to show you guys from my perspective, and most of you guys are going to be in my perspective of I needed to print, and this is my work area. So that's essentially what you guys see. You don't see, it's a no frills type thing. So anyway, one of the things that I guess is kind of a hit or miss for some people is the build plate that is on this printer. It is a perforated build plate. Now, with that being said, the systems that are utilized for this build plate are leveled from the factory, and they should never, ever have to be leveled, ever. Not once. Now, I will say there's some very few times that there's a possibility that it needs to be, but you should be able to fix that through the screen itself, and that way, you know, you can get a better squish, so to speak, to the resin. But essentially, it should work right out of the box with no problems. Like I said, I have kind of heard a few horror stories about that, but it's very, very few. Everybody else that I know that I have suggested this printer to, they have had fantastic results nonstop. Now, with the plate being perforated, that does kind of limit you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't print flat on the build plate, but just note that some more prep work or post processing, however you want to call it, is going to be needed after the fact, because obviously you're going to have those little like round dimples all over your print. So if you are printing a box or whatever it may be flat, you will have to sand that down unless you're okay with that. That's perfectly fine. Some people I know just print backdrops really, really quick, and that they don't even worry about that because it is a backdrop. Nobody's going to see the back of it, so that's perfectly fine. One of the other things I wanted to kind of touch base on is going back to the slicer. So the slicer, like I said, is a fork of a Prusa slicer. For some of those people who are fanboys of Prusa slicer, this might be a very, very easy concept for you guys to learn and navigate the system, because it is a little bit more informative than something like Shitubox or Lychee. Now, with that being said, there is the ability to add Lychee Slicer on here. Unfortunately, you have to downgrade if you have a newer version. I want to say it works on version 1.9.0 or 1.90 on Shitubox, but that's all it works on. Anything above that, it really just it doesn't work anymore. So as I'm making this video, I think we're on 9.1 or 9.4, I think it is. 1.94. There we go. So yeah, there is that. One other thing is I know speed is a big issue with a lot of people. I myself don't necessarily have the time to sit there and wait for a print to finish, essentially. Most of the printers that you guys see in the background here do have speed settings, my own personal blend, just to make it speed up. And we pretty much utilize it as fast as we possibly can without destroying the printer in one go. But, you know, there's always that little disclaimer that there is a possibility for it to happen. So now with the other printers, we do kind of cut our print time in half. With this printer, I don't really touch that. And there's a reason for that. So this printer is actually going to be much, much slower than any of the printers that you see on the market. So if that's off-putting for you, so be it. But there is a reason why we want to maintain those type of speeds and make sure that it does what it needs to do without touching in the settings. Now, I'm not saying that you can't modify the settings, but just know that the reason why they are set at such speeds, and this is kind of going to like the higher end printers that you see, like the Formlabs or the Apsara 3D or the Nexa 3D Zip, those type of printers that are more of an industrial printer, you'll notice that those are kind of like a slower printer. And so there's reasons for that because they maintain the dimensional accuracy for the parts that you are making. I have mostly used this printer for specific reverse engineering stuff, much like this. So we basically take a part that has been broken, and some of you guys may have seen the video where I posted about this. This piece was broken off of this part. It was sent to me. We did some measurements. I had somebody mock up the design, and we essentially made a new design. Now we're going to make 4 of these. Right now I have 3 of them on here, and you can see there is some supports on here. So kind of flowing back to the whole Prusa slicer type thing. That is where this machine kind of shines over any other machine, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to tout like Prusa slicer is the best, but in my opinion, these have the same type of setups as my WeBox printers. They're pretty much made by the same company as my old WeBox Lite 130. And this is essentially just a larger version with a little bit different build plate, but essentially everything else is identical to my WeBox 130. So right then and there, I knew it was going to be a great printer because my WeBox 130 was the best printer I have ever owned in my entire printing career, in my opinion. Lasted 3.5 years. It had 1 screen change and 1 FET film and 1 failure in its entire lifetime. So it went above and beyond my expectations, especially with it being an RGB screen. If you guys do or do not know, most of these printers that you see on the market now have monochrome screen, and they usually last about 6 times longer than an RGB screen. So for it to last 3.5 years with consistent printing just over and over and over again, just blew me away. I mean, we probably had maybe 15,000 hours worth of print time on one single screen, and those are supposed to only be rated. I think they were rated at like 2,000 hours, if that. So anyway, going back to this machine and the Prusa slicer and everything, again, that's where it kind of shines, especially with the supports. The supports get real crazy on these printers, but don't think of it as like there's too much supports going on, or it just seems a little cluttered. The slicer is made to be exactly what it needs to be. Like I said, you don't need to change the settings. You can if you want to, but I don't suggest it. Just let it be. It will work the way that it's intended, and it will work flawlessly. Again, with the supports that this printer has, is just it blows any support that I've had out of the water. Whether the part be large, heavy, small, light, whatever it may be, the support structure across the board will hold on to that print. And one of these things I wanted to show you specifically, this is it's a baseball Chicago Sox egg that was designed by Hex 3D. And sorry for my lighting; these white prints kind of pop too much with my light. But you can see the Sox logo on there. This is a solid print. This is about 500 milliliters of resin. So this is quite heavy, okay? And I put this on just some minor supports that I had in that slicer, and it worked. But then again, talking about that, the slicer does so much. This is Uniformation resin. So it's very simple. You just click a drop-down tab, and it prints beautifully because everything is automatically dialed in for that specific resin and pretty much no failure. So it prints very, very well with the Uniformation resin. And that's not saying that you have to use the Uniformation resin. I'm just saying that your printing experience is going to be far better and far easier if you utilize that type of resin. But you can use any third-party resin on this printer, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So now I'm just going to kind of show you guys some prints that I did. This one you guys may or may not know from your childhood. At least it's from my childhood growing up. And if you are a gamer, you guys might already have known who this is. So again, my apologies for the white wash here, but that is Earthworm Jim from the good old days of Sega Genesis. So he did print in different parts. So we have his arms and his head, and then his legs that printed all separately. And then we basically put them together. So he is a very, very good model. Oh, and then also his little backpack here. So that model is fantastic. I absolutely love it. Since we're in October and it's spooky season, oh God, I'm breaking things. So, and now I just broke a print. So I don't think we're going to show that one off. Anyway, so with us being in spooky season, I've had some people ask me to do some Halloween prints. So I decided to do this one. This one's really, really cool because it's more or less made for like jewelry and things like that. So you can just hold things and it's made to go on your nightstand. And just as usual, I will provide all the links to the files here that I possibly can down below. So if you guys want to go ahead and print these and, you know, credit the creator of it. But these are really, really cool prints. This one I sized up to be as big as I possibly could on the build volume. And again, this was printed in the Uniformation resin, so we can get the best results out of it. Now, going back to the whole third-party resin thing, so I've been kind of working with Monicure 3D. If you guys don't know who Monicure 3D, I highly suggest you check them out. They are based in Australia, and they basically provide a higher-end resin, I would say. Them and 3DRS are probably my top-tier resins that I would use. They're very low chemicals. They actually formulate things to work very, very well. Kind of be it like for those people who are watching who are into FDM, Monicure 3D and 3DRS are kind of like the proto-pasta to filament printing. That's essentially what they are. They're the same type of stuff, a little bit more money, but when you print with it, you can tell that they print smoothly. And that's just how it is. And that's the same thing with this. And I have kind of roughed this up, so my apologies if you guys can't see it, but I'm going to try and get the detail out of this. But if you guys can or cannot see, there's something inside of there. And essentially, this is a little miniature Santa that is inside here, and you can kind of see it hollowed out here. And we printed this directly on the build plate. And again, I just sanded down the bottom to get rid of those little nubs because, like I said, the build plate is perforated in here. So that is really, really nice. Again, you do have to dial in your settings to make sure that these third-party resins work with the machine. And that's pretty much across the board with any resin printer. You're not dialed into, let me rephrase that. Any budget style printer, you're pretty much not locked into the specific brand that that printer is needing. So like if you buy any other type of brand, you don't have to go with their brand of resin. You can buy anybody's type of resin as long as it goes with the machine. So if you have a MSLA printer, which pretty much all these ones in the background are MSLA, that's masking stereolithography. So essentially a screen that outputs an image and then it creates that. That's essentially what it is. So as long as the bottle of resin is a UV 405 NM, pretty much any type of resin will work on this printer and you can go ahead and use it. You just have to dial in the settings and make sure that it works properly. Because if you don't, you will end up having failures. Again, going back to the whole slicer thing. The slicer does a lot of the work for you, but essentially you still have to do some of the work yourself, again, especially if you're doing third party. So I was going to try and show you this really cool resin print, but unfortunately we broke it into about a gazillion pieces. But we didn't even save her. So I did have a really, really cool dragon print that I wanted to show you guys, but yeah, that didn't really work out. So hey, it is what it is, and that's kind of how it is. So I'm going to show you, well, I guess since it's Halloween, we can show some headless corpses type thing. But yeah, this print is very, very nice. There is some support nubs that we still have to remove there. But all in all, this print came out very, very smooth. And again, at a 5K resolution, this prints very, very well. Um, One thing I wanted to leave you guys with is some information about the printer itself. Unfortunately, at the time of making this video, it seems like Uniformation is kind of discontinuing this printer for the time being. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be back, but right now it is sold out anywhere that you possibly can find. So, unfortunately, with this review and it being so late, I kind of missed my time window, so my apologies for that. But if you guys do happen to come across this printer brand new, whether it be on Amazon, and unfortunately it is limited to Amazon US, for those people outside of the US, you will have to go on to uniformation3d.com, and I will provide links down below. If I have an affiliate link for them, I will, as I normally do. But just to let you know, price range from this, they range anywhere from $600 to $800, depending on where you're going. I think that is a fantastic price for the type of printer that you're getting. And with it being a 10-inch printer, your build volume is much larger than most of the printers out there. So this one is actually 220 by 130 by 245, the build volume. So it is kind of like around a Mono X type style build in terms of the Z height. And then you got a little bit more on the build plate. So it's kind of closer to like the Mono X6K, I would say. So, but again, you are printing at a 5K resolution, so slightly less resolution. Again, that's not, it's going to be very minimalistic between the two. But in my opinion, this is probably going to be the better bang for your buck, even though that printer is newer technology. Just trust me on this. You guys know and seen through my videos how much I boast about my WeBox 130. This is basically an upgraded version of it, and essentially it's a larger version of it. And I, again, have been printing nonstop with this thing and specifically prototyping stuff. This is where this printer shines. And I'm not saying you can't use it for miniatures or little knickknacks or toys or anything like that. You can absolutely use it for anything that you possibly want. But this, I guess, is more geared for people who are going to be doing casting, dental stuff, and prototyping parts because, like I said, the dimensional accuracy of this printer is where this thing really, really shines. And then, of course, coupled with the fork of the Prusa slicer that they have, everything just works and flows beautifully. And again, going back to the whole uniformation resin, it is perfect. They have such great type of resins out there, like a great variety of them that you can utilize for this printer. This was actually printed on some higher end resin. It's some tougher resin, so this actually has some resilience to it. So it's going to stand up to the test of time. Obviously, you know, with resin, it does still kind of crack over time, but it will last a lot better than like any other stuff that I printed, like this mask, these dragons, anything like that. So your typical standard or even ABS resin, this is going to outperform that. And I will let you know just a little bit word of advice in advance. If you are going to use the X22, which that's the formulation of this resin, just know that the support removal is going to be quite different than what any other standard resin is going to be. Usually they just kind of tear off like no problem. The super butter-like, that's another great thing. Like I said, the support structure is unmatched by any other printer that I've worked with. And that's the same basically with the WeBox printers. But anyway, um, with the X22, they're more like a rubbery feel to them. They're very, very strange to remove. So I'm just giving you guys that little bit of heads up that if you are going to use the X22 formulation on this, that you probably want to just prepare yourself mentally for trying to remove those supports because it is a little bit tougher to remove them than a standard type of resin. So I have done two upgrades to this printer. I guess you can kind of call them upgrades. they're more or less like part swaps or usability. So we'll just call them upgrades as it is. So I just recently upgraded the knobs that are on here. The ones that come with it, they work, but I found myself having issues where the build plate would slip away from it. So essentially, I went out and I bought some M6 replacement knobs, and I probably will end up buying larger knobs because these smaller ones they work okay, but they're still just a tad bit smaller for me. So I need something with a little more oomph around it. And you have plenty of space to play with, so there's no worry there. But I did add some extra nuts onto this to kind of bring it up off of the base, so I have more of a an ability to turn without like nicking my knuckles on it. Because the older ones were like right there, and with this build plate, I kind of nicked my knuckles a couple times. It's not the end of the world, but it was just something that I saw needed a slight upgrade to it or a change. So that's what I did, and that was just a recent change. And so far, it's been working perfectly. The locking mechanism has been working great. And, I haven't really had any issues with the build plate slipping away from anything at any point in time, regardless if there's resin all over it. So the other one that I had is a kind of minor upgrade change, I guess you could call it. And I'm probably going to do that across the board with all of my printers. But essentially, this printer has a front USB stick. So that means that the USB stick kind of sticks right out front here. So kind of just like this. So the chances of you knocking into it and destroying the USB port or the USB in general are very, very high. So essentially what I did is I scoured Amazon one late night, and again, I'll leave the link in the description for all of this stuff. And I found this. This is an adapter, and it basically takes it off to the side. Now you're going to have to do some research and figure out which side it needs to go on, because you can absolutely have one that goes off to the left-hand side here. This one just so happens to go off to the right hand instead of the left. So, but I do have other ones that I can swap it out here, and I can go to the left. Then there's also ones that you can go up or down, vertically instead of horizontally. So you can change that out if you want to. It's not a huge deal, but for me, I just always worry about knocking into something when I'm taking off a build plate or just utilizing the system in general. I always worry about that. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for this printer. If you have the chance to pick one up, I absolutely 100% suggest this printer. It is a printer above the others. And while it may print the same stuff that every other printer does, it just does it without problems. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And like I said, if you couple that with the Uniformation resin, it's smooth sailing across the board. So I highly suggest it. It's a fantastic printer. This one is kind of a prototype version, so they did do some minor changes, especially with the build leveling. Like mine still has the ability to do the 4-point leveling system, but on the newer ones, they basically block it off. There's no reason to level it. If there's something wrong with it, contact support and they can probably walk you through it. But essentially, the printer just it's good to go right out of the box. That's the greatest thing about any printer that I could possibly want. And if I'm spending the money around $600 to $800, I definitely want a printer that just you take it out and you start printing with it. Like that is the greatest experience you could possibly have. Who doesn't want a printer like that? I mean, I personally would love if all of the printers that come out on the market just you take it out of the box, you put some resin in it, and you hit print. It would be fantastic to do that. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, but with some of these higher end printers and the less known printers, you kind of get that. Now, I'm going to leave this with you before we go. With this being a unique printer, the brand is not obviously as big as some of the others out there. Anycubic, Creality, Elegoo, you name it. So parts, they are there, but they probably will be a little bit harder to find. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't find parts. They're just going to be a little less easier to get to than some printers. And, you know, there's only a handful of people here. So if you need help with the community, I'm always around. You guys know how to contact me. I have all of my links available for everybody. And I'm always here to help out, especially with a printer like this, because it is a different printing experience than all of the others that I've had here. Okay. It's much like my Weebox 130 or my Weebox 215. It's closer to the 215, actually. Um, but again, it is a very unique printer, so just keep that in mind when you guys are going to purchase it. Is this something that I want to go down that type of road? And just know that when you purchase that printer, you will be getting a much higher quality product, but the community backing is going to be almost non-existent. Okay. There's probably, I can say without a doubt, less than 25 people that actually have this printer or are part of the group that know how to utilize this printer. So just bear that in mind. But I will tell you, if you do get this printer, you will see that it is vastly different than any other resin printer you guys have, and it is a far superior printer in every way that you could possibly think. Yes, even though there is a perforated build plate, and I know a lot of people don't like that, it just works. The great thing about this is the build plate just comes off. The leveling system stays on the printer. That's how crazy this is. It's just a metal plate that's just like this big, okay? And it pulls right off, and you can set it and stand it right there, and you can remove your print super easy. I have not had a problem removing a print from this perforated build plate, nor have I had any issues with dried resin in there because it is an open platform. It is insanely easy to clean that entire build plate platform. And so, with that being said, I hope you guys take a look at these printers. And like I said, as I'm making this video, there's actually a new version coming out. And yes, you guys will be seeing that on the channel very soon here. It is the Uniformation GK2. And you guys definitely don't want to miss that. So that's pretty much all I got for right now. And I hope you guys enjoyed the review of my rambling on. And yeah, until next time, guys, happy printing.